I said, I'm just a junkie, that's all I'll ever be.
The voice of a hopeless addict. And the family who was trying to save him.
She said, I gotta tell you guys, I'm shooting up.
We just kept saying, this is not going to happen. This is not what God has intended for you.
I tried to control him. I tried to love him. I was angry at him. None of it worked. I would pray for him that God would get a hold of his heart.
Brandon Henderson was not always an addict. The son of a minister, he gave his life to Jesus when he was 7.
I had a strong encounter with God at that time. Became really, at a young age, on fire for God and had a hunger for him in my life.
But a storm would come that would shape his life for years to come. It happened at a boys' club sleepover.
A couple of the older boys molested me and several of the other younger boys in there. And so when this happened in my life, it really shook my faith. Again, I blamed myself for not being able to stop it, and so there was shame and guilt.
Embarrassed and afraid, Brandon told no one. By his early teens, he was using marijuana, alcohol, and sex to dull his pain.
I started to do things to validate who I was, and every line that I crossed, I would begin to feel more guilt and more shame. And so I just continued to spiral and to slip further and further from God.
There was a bright spot in Brandon's life. Her name was Julie. They met at a church camp, became high school sweethearts, and married shortly after graduation. He still smoked pot and drank on occasion. But in 2008, he found something more effective.
Got in a bad car accident, really hurt my back. Got sent to pain management. They started prescribing me opiates, and I took the opiates and the pain went away. Almost instantly, I was hooked.
Within the year, Brandon's drug use had escalated to heroin. He was also selling prescription drugs. Julie had seen signs of addiction, but then she found the needles.
I think, Lord, he is trying to kill himself. There is no hope. I don't know what to do. And so many times I wanted to leave, but I thought, if I leave, he'll die. If I stay, he'll die. Lord, what do I do?
In 2010, he was arrested during a drug bust and sentenced to 2 years on house arrest. In that time, he and Julie had a daughter, but even becoming a father wasn't enough to keep him from going back to drugs.
I absolutely loved her, and I kept trying to quit them all, and I remember looking at her and thinking, this little girl's gonna be better off without me.
Over the next several years, Brandon was in and out of jail and rehab, unable to control his addictions.
The reason I kept going back is because I wasn't dealing with the emotional pain that was driving me to do that. I still had that hurt on the inside because I saw myself as trash.
Every time the phone rings, you think this is the call, that they found him OD'd or on the side of the road. Or
The Bible talks about God calling things that are not as though they are. I would call him and say, hey, man of God. And he said, Dad, don't you know I'm not a man of God. I just shot up. I'm going to end up dead someday.
And I remember when he'd say that to me, it would hit me like right in that heart. Something in my heart said, yes, I want to be a man of God, but I don't see how that's possible.
All this time, there was Julie by his side, crying out to God for her husband.
I just said, Lord, whatever your will is, please let it be done. If it's to save him now. If it's to take him, then take him so we're not hurting and he's not hurting anymore.
Then in 2012, Brandon was placed in Dunklin Christian Rehabilitation Center. 1 month later, he was returned to jail for violating his probation. When he was released, he quickly resumed his destructive behavior. That's when Julie knew it was time to take their daughter and leave. On her way out, she sadly reported Brandon for violating his probation again.
I finally just cried out to God. I was like, God, I don't care what it looks like. If I go to jail, if I go to prison for however long, I can't keep doing this. With whatever you want from my life, I'm going to serve you.
The next day, Brandon stood before the judge.
So I go to court and, I had that surrender moment. Even still, though, I'm standing there shackled and I'm more nervous because I had a daughter now and I felt something, a presence settle on my shoulders and just heard a soft whisper, I got this. The judge came back from the sidebar conversation. He's like, I don't know why I'm doing this. He said, I'm going to give you your prison sentence, but I'm going to suspend it in lieu of you going back to Dunklin and getting your life back together.
It was there with a Christian counselor, Brandon was finally able to talk about his molestation and break the bonds keeping him in addiction and learn his true value in Christ.
I walked through forgiveness with the guys who did that, and forgiveness with myself, and my parents, and with God. There's so much freedom in forgiveness. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, and I no longer saw a junkie, but I saw somebody who was a father, and a husband, and a son, and somebody who actually had hope.
Brandon is still drug-free and is a sales manager for a national telecommunications company. He spends most of his free time with his beautiful wife and 3 children.
Today, he's the son that we lost during those span of years. The little boy that was full of joy.
And God was just restoring my identity. And he was telling me, you are precious, you are valuable. You know, and see, he was taking the mess that I made and he was making it something beautiful into his own masterpiece.